Got an awesome tech team.
Yeah, you do. All right. But I need to be able to see this. I need to see all of you, not me. And how do I get rid of the participants on the side? Tech team, how do I get rid of that?
Should we just be able to close the box? Is it a box or is it?
Here we go. All right, woohoo! All right, nice to see all of you. Sorry, 8:03. Oh man, this is unforgivable.
You have to
Be
talk a
late,
little faster.
never late to anything. Okay, that's not really true. Okay, nice to see you all. Let's see, we've got 16. That's a great place to start. Let me pray for us as we get ready to get into Revelation. Just see who all's here. Yes, nice to see everyone. Okay, Father, thank you very much for another great day. We're glad to be here. We're going to open up this text that you have inspired for us, written to another group of people, and yet for us, and we want to try to understand it. So help us to understand, help us have good conversation, especially today as we discuss some hard things about empire and nationalism and maybe Zionism and Babylon and harvest and some crazy blood all the way up to the horse's bridle. It's messy, hard to figure out, and we need your help. So enlighten us today, please, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so I am just going to remind you for half a second what we're doing and who we are, and then I'm going to let Brad kind of do a little summary or a little, he put together some things for a few minutes just to remind us of where we've been, and then he'll kind of kick it off back to me to lead a little bit of a discussion to see if we want to go in that place. I'm ready for chapter 14 if we jump into it. If we don't, that's okay too. We can wait till next week. But here's who we are for those of you who are new. We got a couple of new people as usual. So right now we're walking through the book of Revelation. We walked through Genesis, we walked through Exodus, we walked through a whole bunch of stuff like in hermeneutics and things like that. But generally the point of this group, the reason it was designed is a place for you to be able to ask questions and feel safe, to experiment, to go outside the box, to not worry about sticking in some evangelical bubble, whatever yours is, we all have them. So whatever that is, you know, that's okay. We're going to step out of it and ask questions, and I won't know the answers, but somebody might, and none of us might, and we'll just be uncertain together and just go on a journey together. So that's kind of the plan. This is probably not like most of your Bible studies, although the Revelation class is probably most like any Bible studies we've ever done on Zoom. And we've been doing it for, what, about 20 weeks now, Book of Revelation, probably. And we got maybe another 10 or 15 to go. All right, so Brad, will you bring us back to all this? Tell me what's been going on here, especially in chapter 13. Unless, do we want to go back further and remind people what's going on in Revelation, or are you going to do that too, Brad?
No, I'm not. I'm starting with
Okay.
13. So
All right, so let's just do a quick reminder, right? For the first several chapters, there's a revelation, not revelations, a revelation of Jesus Christ to John and therefore to the churches at large. And that's just the first few chapters. It's a picture of God in his temple and Jesus Christ shining, right? Then we have these different sets of, I hesitate to call them judgments because Dr. Dalrymple will come over here and smack me, but he's not on here, so he doesn't know that I'm calling him that. But these things that happen when you're not living up to God's call in your life. And that's going to be this series of trumpets and this series of seals, okay, which is what we've talked about so far. Seals, 7 different seals that are going to be opened up, including the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? And the 7 trumpets, including those last 3, whoa, 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 those kinds of things that happen. All right, we haven't gotten to the bowls yet. The bowls are going to be poured out. That's going to be really obviously a judgment, I think. But the other ones are kind of just things that happen because of not following Jesus, right? And just the natural consequences that seem to happen and the plagues that follow because of all that. So this whole book is not about trying to tell you the future. Quick little reminder there, everyone. This book is not about the future. This book is predominantly about the past and maybe some about their present. For us, that means almost 100% the past. So if you're looking for it to tell you something about newspaper articles, about what's happening in the Middle East or anything like that, just like, no, that's not what we're trying, it's not what we're saying here. This is stuff that took place 1900 years ago plus. Okay, if you're looking to figure out whether there's going to be a millennium, whether there's going to be a rapture, you're reading apocalyptic literature askew. I won't say wrong, but askew, not quite accurately, not exhaustively for what it's trying to do. So it's trying to tell a love story about Jesus and the church to a people who are being persecuted and hurt. And it's trying to tell them it's okay. The Lamb will conquer, right? It's a love story for the Lamb. Oh, that's nice. Hi, Mary. That's great. Good job. Where's Mary? Yeah, nice. Just Lisa and Mary having a little conversation there on there. All right. So that's what's happening here. Now we've gotten to chapter 13, which is where things get really weird, right? Chapter 12 is this dragon that comes and chases this child, chases the woman. The woman has a child, tries to chase the child, but the child instead is caught up to God. And then the dragon gets ticked off. How dare you take this child from me, right? And so he starts attacking all the people that the child has created, basically. That is the church. And he sends out these two beasts, these two wild things, where the wild things are. That's what we should have titled this chapter, where the wild, because in Hebrew, that's what it is, just the wild ones, right? The beasts are the wild ones. All right, so Brad, tell us what you've gleaned by reading Dalrymple and doing your own little bit of study there. You guys know I like to let other people jump in here every once in a while, not just hear from me. So I'll shut up. Go.
Okay, so there we saw in the beginning verses of chapter 13 that John's describing a beast that appears to be harking back to Daniel 7 and the four beasts or kingdoms. And so what he describes as a beast, we concluded was actually representing all empires and nations. In fact, if you remember when we talked before about the number 4 and its seeming recurrence that we see quite often, what did we suggest that 4 was suggesting to us? Anyone?
The earth.
And with regard to the earth, what were we saying that it was suggesting?
Completion or totality or.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were suggesting that by referring to the 4 winds, the 4 corners, the 4 directions, we were speaking of the totality of God's creation. We see here that John in Revelation, he is often referring to the beast. He's referring to Babylon, the great whore, with maybe a oblique reference to Caesar Nero. Doesn't seem like there's a mention of the Empire Rome. But I wanted to cite, I found a reference in a book called A Companion to the Roman Empire. And in this, Paula Fredrickson, who happened to be with Hebrew University of Jerusalem, she says, John described his vision of the great whore of Babylon, who fornicated with the kings of the earth, drank the blood of the saints, sat on the 7 hills. She says a clear reference to Rome. And then she goes on to reference Irenaeus, about a century after John is writing. So we're somewhere in the 2nd century. And that Irenaeus decoded the 4th beast of Daniel 7 and the beast from the sea of Revelation 13 as, quote, the empire that is currently reigning. And of course, that would have been in somewhere in the 2nd century. That would have been who was currently reigning. What was the empire?
It's Rome.
Rome. Okay. So she goes on to note that Irania, you remember how we used the rubric of the gematria and our reference to numbers and how those numbers could be translated into words. And we had several possibilities, several numbers, 666, 616, and what those could possibly mean. So supposedly this is another one that is mentioned by Irenaeus, which is that it refers to Latinus, Latinus. And I'll let Jace figure out how you actually make 666 or 616 into Latinus. And then this reference in the same book that I'm referring to also suggests that there was a reference by Irenaeus to referring to actually from the book of 2 Thessalonians, where it mentions the lawless one. And his statement was that the lawless one was in fact the emperor of Rome. Then a little bit later than that, so now in the 3rd century, there was Saint Victorinus or Victorinus along about 270 AD, says that he is awaiting, quote, the destruction of Babylon, that is the city of Rome. And Saint Victorinus actually in the year 303 was martyred under Emperor Diocletian. So I just thought I'd throw in those other little early on historical references from 2nd and 3rd century, where it's clear to them anyway that the reference that John was making was to Rome and the Roman Empire. Any thoughts, questions so far on any of that?
So let me summarize what you just said, right? So you said that the first beast is empire, also called Babylon. In their particular day, it's referencing Rome. So whenever you're talking about this first beast, you need to be thinking Rome, political power, but not just Rome, as this still applies, but empire in general. Okay, and then by using gematria, which is just a numbers and letters game, where you associate letters to numbers, then people in Latin were able to come up. If you use the word Nero Caesar in Latin, it comes up to 616, and if you use it in Hebrew, it comes up to 666. Okay, so some people, that is, the people translating in Latin, thought they changed it to 616 because they were so convinced that it was Nero. I'm not so convinced that it's Nero. I think that's a pretty hard thing to come up with. It could be, but the point is the same, right? Whether it's Nero Caesar or any Caesar, it's empire. And I think it's trying to say it's less than 777, which would be perfection. And remember what Jesus Christ's name comes out to be, 888, which I thought was really fantastic and fascinating last week. And they may have known that, and maybe that's where it was going. So I know I took it a step further than you, Brad, but I'm just trying to summarize plus go a little further.
Yeah. So from there, then we saw that the beast was empowered by Satan, 13:2 of Revelation. And for what purpose? Well, what we saw was to oppose Christ and his kingdom, to oppose the people of God, verse or 13:7, to literally make war with the saints. So we have Christ as king versus the nations or empire. The beast undermines Christ's authority as the world's true king, and does so in a way that demands the worship and allegiance to the empire, which of course is the allegiance that belongs to Christ. And here I'm gonna read a little statement. This is from our friend Dr. Dalrymple. He was back in the fall, he was doing some postings on his Determined Truth website, and he had quite a few there that were Revelation related. And so one of his statements there was, instead of humanity fulfilling its role as God's image bearers who rule over the beasts, Revelation says that humanity has instead become the beasts. Remember, Satan is the deceiver. Those in power utilize Satan's most powerful weapon, deception. And then I had another passage I wanted to cite quickly from this book, which is Sinners in the Hands of a Loving God. And in there, Zond says that John wants his readers, who he fears are slipping into a complacent complicity with Rome, to remember that Rome isn't evil only when it persecutes Christians. Rather, Rome is always evil because of its idolatry and injustice. Empire is always a direct challenge to the kingdom of God. And he goes on to say, believers in the 7 cities of Asia Minor must resist the temptation to accommodate Christian faith to Roman civil religion. And with that, Jace, back to you.
Okay, so excellent. Brian Zahnd, it's a great book, very super easy to read, not a scholarly book, just a very practical, enjoyable book trying to explain who Jesus is. But I love this separation here, right? So it's the question is, who is king, or who will you worship? Who are you going to fall before? And you're gonna worship somebody, right? I think there's an old song that says that, right? We're all going to worship somebody. Anybody know what song that is?
Bob Dylan.
There you go. I'm pretty sure. I thought that's right. We're all going to worship somebody. So it's going to either be the beast or it's going to be Jesus. Okay, you're not going to worship both of them. You can't worship both of them. So not only Brian Zahnd, but also I was been reading Scott McKnight's new one. Just want to give you a little heads up there. Scott McKnight's, which is called Revelation for the Rest of Us, I think. Yep. Prophetic call to follow Jesus as a dissident disciple. Okay, so I think that's really kind of what the point of Revelation is. It's a call to follow the Lamb as a dissident, as in someone who will not hold to the empire. And you think, okay, no problem. We don't want to be a part of the empire, right? Who wants to be part of the empire? The empire strikes back? No, we want to be on the rebel side. Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, right? We don't want, or whatever the weird new movies are all about. Okay, so but don't think about it as this. Think about it as nations. Okay, it's bigger than nations, but that's what it's talking about. Politics. It's talking about power, and it's not just empire nations. It's also religion. So the second beast is really this religion that is supporting the first beast, which is supporting the dragon. And we've got this threefold thing, right? So dragon, which is the devil. Okay, the serpent of old, Genesis 3, the scaly thing, serpents, dragons, they're all the bad guys. Okay, and then you've got beast 1, which is a representative of Leviathan, or Leviathan represents him. Okay, which is empire or nations. And then beast number 2 is Behemoth. And this is the one that is, he lives on the land. This one comes out of the sea, this one comes on the land. And this is the religious leaders. And the religious leaders are pointing you to the empire. They're saying, hey, I mean, they actually become one, right? Like, we're one of the few countries in the world that thinks about things like, well, religion and politics are separate. We like to keep those things separate, or at least we pretend we do. But they didn't never think about that. That's right. The emperors were gods or sons of gods. They were divine beings of some kind. They had become that status with Julius Caesar, or really with Octavian, referring to Julius Caesar. Remember, Octavian is Caesar Augustus from Luke 2. There came a decree in all the world that all the world should be taxed. Remember that? And then it's the story of Jesus going, okay, that's Octavian. Augustus, and he says Julius Caesar is a divine being, and then all of them after that. That's why he takes the name Augustus, a revered one, and then all of them from Domitian, Diocletian. I think Brad just talked about him, which is 100 years later after all of this. Nero, all these emperors then started to pull themselves up to God status. Some more, some less, right? But they were all together. Religion and nation state are together. So what we wanted to kind of talk about, see what you guys wanted to say about, since we didn't get enough of a chance to do that in the last 2 weeks, is this even really a problem for us anymore? I mean, with our separation of state, religion and politics, there's, church and state are separated now. Does this even speak to us? Like, there's no combination of religion and nation anymore, is there?
Absolutely not.
Oh, yes.
Travis says no. Oh, Fran says yes. Yeah.
Is this the part where we just say, ha?
Jason's setting us up. Yeah.
Do we leave now? Do we mute? How do we handle this, y'all?
I like to call it
Well-
the evangelical industrial complex.
Uh-huh.
It's like
There
the
you go.
military industrial complex, but like
Uh-huh.
in just as powerful.
Uh-huh.
Nice. The evangelical industrial complex.
I like
Just
that.
as
It rolls
powerful
off
as
the
the
tongue
book.
nicely.
Yeah. Okay, so
Is-
all right, so tell me more. Or got someone else was about to say
No,
something.
is the beast, so the beast is nations or Babylon or and the religious folk and or the power and or the combination, the deadly combination of both. But one of the other things what comes to mind is in the beginning where Adam and Eve chose knowledge of good and evil, and I feel like knowledge could be the beast. As philosophy and science try to, and I'm enamored with these two things. Try to grapple with the Bible, but maybe even just the story and God and who is God and man, who is man, and what is consciousness and so on and so forth. We come to the mystery because really we can't answer these questions with certainty. So my thing is we have a revelation in Jesus Christ. We have a revelation in the gospel message, and yet man is it's continuously trying to divert or what you would call deceive us into thinking that we can be like God or know like God, and we can answer the questions that everybody wants to answer, but nobody can. So I'm suggesting, I guess, with that little mini rant, is that the beast is more than just empire and religion. It is knowledge in general.
Okay. So you're just trying to connect that to the tree of wisdom and the garden,
Yes.
and you're doing that through the dragon somehow?
I mean, I'm suggesting that it's I mean, knowledge and wisdom, like, for example, the dragon, not the dragon per se, but the beast number 2 would be religion. And then beast number 1 would be nations. So let's give an example with our nation. All right. We have progressive evangelicals who are pushing an agenda of scientific proofs and things like that, trying to coincide with the Bible. And we're trying to answer questions that the Bible's really not asking. And then you have on the conservative side, you have even on the right wing side, evangelicals who are definitely combining. That's why the sarcastic, laugh from Travis and so on is you have like Trumpism, which is a thing where you have people who are literally combining conservative Christianity with presidency and pushing an agenda that way, which seems to be systematically racist and other things. But you have on both sides, this side that's trying to prove the Bible right through science and so on, and this other side who's trying to prove the nation's right and Christianity is the right way. And both are basically, I think, pushing people away. And anyways, I've spoken too long, but yeah, somehow that coincides. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm just talking out of my neck.
Separation of church and state. There you go.
Oh, all right, there you go. All right. Thoughts on that image or what Josh was saying?
I think Josh just gave just excellent example of a overarching thing, what it looks like across the nation, across the culture. My question is how does that look for individuals and families and churches and groups coming from a small going bigger?
All right. So how do individuals deal with this? Maybe these two extremes that Josh put into place of the Bible is telling us what to do, the nations are telling us what to do. Or how do we deal with empire in general?
You don't?
What?
You don't?
All right. So are we called to stand up against this problem? Or are we just called to, I don't know, just let it happen?
That's what the first part of this chiasm is telling us,
It's telling us to do what?
to stand up against it, to stay together,
Okay. Stay together.
isn't it? Yeah, to believe in God's word.
Yeah. I
to
think it's
follow
telling us.
his word.
Yeah.
Stay strong.
I'm looking for practical examples. It sounds like at least a few people here, I'm not going to just say all 20, whatever of you here, 22 of you, all agree that that nationalism or that the state and religion have become mixed, despite Travis's two great pictures there, right? And I'm guessing that, I'm not sure, would you find it bad for President Trump to have a bunch of people put his hands on him and pray for him? Or for President Biden to stand in front of a cross with a Bible? I don't know if he had a Bible or not. Are those things wrong to do?
No.
Is that a mixing of religion and politics in some kind of a bad way? Like, is that what the Bible's talking about here?
I think there's a verse about doing it in public versus doing it in private, and like staging a photo op and then publishing it out.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a verse for that either, but about the photo op thing.
Those who pray in the streets versus those who pray in the privacy of their own homes. I think it was about the Pharisees, right? Jesus said it, or I think it's in red letters.
We've talked about red letters before, Travis.
I know.
But we are to
So I
pray
think-
for our
I think
leaders.
Say that again, Brad.
We are to pray for our leaders.
Right, we are to pray for our leaders. So I think part of that is a heart intention. And I don't want to speak too much to the heart of this, because it's not necessarily wrong for us to say something. Like if I were to tell you, for Lent, I'm giving up chocolate and Cokes, right? I think this is a decent spiritual practice. I think all of you guys should join me in giving up something. Okay, that's not a wrong thing, even though I've made it public to you. Like I'm trying to be a model for something. I'm trying to call you to something. What happens is with my heart starts to be like, hey guys, look what I'm doing, right? I'm giving up all these things. Look how great I am. Aren't I so much better than regular people? So I think there's a difference between how that's done. And I don't know if I want to spend too much time trying to figure out whether Trump's heart is in the right place or not, or Biden's heart is in the right place or not, because I don't want this to become a political conversation. Like we've done enough of that. In fact, that's the chapter that I'm reading in Scott McKnight's book is all about that, right? How the politics have become so emboldened against each other, so just hating each other, that the church goes the other direction, right? The Republicans hate the Democrats hate the Republicans, et cetera. But what about in general? Like the nation, are we giving credence to the empire that is right now in some ways that that maybe is unintentional?
Sure.
Is it okay for us to pledge allegiance in some sense? I don't care about this, but to say, like, I love my country, I'm a patriot, it's a good thing.
Okay,
Is
let me give you an example. Darren Aronofsky just had a movie called The Whale. He just came out with this movie. Well, he came out with it recently, won an Oscar, all that. in it, it's so articulate because it shows humanity at its finest and at its worst. And it shows that one person can be both good and bad, which is the human condition. And so to answer your question, I can give you a clear-cut, concrete example out of the movie, but I don't want to take too much time. The fact is every character has good traits and bad traits, and they're both doing something good and bad. And it's really deep and complex, but that's the nature of humanity. And that's the paradox is, which to answer your question, is that okay for Biden to like give a speech at a church? Yeah, of course it is. But at what point does that become wrong? You
Right.
know,
So-
what I'm saying? It's both. It's both wrong and right. So at what point? I don't know.
I don't know if it's wrong or right for them to do that, but we are certainly called to be discerning. So that's on us.
Good.
I mean, we could ask the question another way too. What if either of them, Trump or Biden, were genuine Christians? Would we be upset that they would implore the Lord for his help to guide the nation? I mean, why would that be such a bad thing if someone genuinely loving Jesus ascends to the presidency and wants to be sensitive to leading the nation in a way that God would want him to do? I'm not saying that that is the case for Trump or Biden, but to put the shoe on the other foot, I am saying, why wouldn't we want someone who truly trusts in the Lord to be leading the nation based off of their personal relationship with the Lord in some ways?
We pray for that.
So maybe it's not a question of whether religion and politics can mix. We kind of hope that Jesus will be involved in politics, right? I mean, I would say just on an aside, right? This Bible is an incredibly political book, right? In the best possible senses. It's all about who will be the king, right? That's the whole question. Who's going to be king? That's a political question. And throughout the Gospels, the answer is Jesus, not Nero, not Herod, not whoever's in power, not Caesar Augustus. So it's not that question. The question is maybe not empire stuff, but power. How is it that we hand over power to these empires? Like, I mean, obviously they take it. And are we somehow responsible for giving America this kind of power? And then putting Jesus, like Jesus somehow supports what we're doing because we're doing it, right? Because America's blessed, right? The new Israel, the light shining on a hill, etc. So whatever we do must be right, which surely can't be the case, right?
Well, look at the model. Look at your church. I'll use an example. Westernized capitalist church. Is that the model that we want to run the body of Christ with? Because on one end, it's a business. On the other, I mean, they don't coincide. They just don't work together well. I mean, we have proof. I have proof. It's proven, but yet this is our model. But the community of Jesus looks differently. How do you have a capitalist society, a democracy, when Jesus is a pacifist? The only way we can keep our ground is by going to war and being a militaristic. It contradicts itself completely. So yeah, there's an issue with that. There's a huge issue right in the middle of it. But how else do we do it? Because the nature of man is as such. When we don't become militaristic, we get taken over by another person who is militaristic. So therefore,
Right.
you know, you're either militaristic or you're a slave to militarism. Anyway.
So at least if we fight, then we win, then we conquer, and now we have the power, and we can tell everybody that Jesus is king, right? So because we're the strongest. I mean, this is the Constantinian era, isn't it? Constantine wins, and now Christianity becomes acceptable, and that's how it spread to the entire earth. But I'm not sure that was the best thing, because up until that point, at least it seems that the whole Jesus movement was about power under. And after Constantine, it became all about power over. We're going to win. But the book of Revelation is all about how you win. It's never by conquering other people. It's always by, I mean, who are the victors? Who are the ones who are going to sing the song? The victor song. Those who have been martyred, that are under the altar.
Yeah, those that are, yeah.
It's a call to pick up your cross, not to pick up arms. The book of Revelation is all about giving in. You say, oh, well, I can't be walked on. Yeah, because you're an American, right? Because you've crossed this boundary and you somehow associated Americanism to Christianity. If somebody comes into my house, you darn well better believe I'm gonna shoot them. Yeah, because you're an American, not a Christian first, right? Because we somehow put these worlds together. Yeah, we have to fight for our rights. If they destroy our our Empire State Building, something like that, well, then we will go and we will kick their butt. And in fact, I don't even want to watch a movie that doesn't show us getting revenge or justice, right? I don't want to watch a movie that shows that we lose. That's because I'm an American first. I want to see us get justice. And justice is a beautiful thing, isn't it? And we should be all about justice. That's what the prophets have been talking about forever.
So is dualism. I think dualism, so is dualism. I mean, if you can't escape dualism, because if you say I'm a person who believes in oneness, okay, and you believe that, you know, if God is sovereign, he creates good and evil. This is the mystery, by the way. And he says, well, so then you ask the person who's into oneness, you say, so you're either dualist or one or not. So by then you're dualist. You're practicing dualism because you have to choose. And so, you know, we can't escape dualism. And so that's kind of the whole concept behind what you were saying with good and evil, like the conqueror and the unconquered. I'm kind of going off a little bit onto dualism. I don't want to do that, but you can't escape. I love dualism. And I'm not saying because we're dualist and because there has to be a good and an evil. I mean, how could we know what is good without evil or bad, the bad? I mean, I don't want to see evil, just the bad. How do we know what is good without the bad? How do we know what is light without the dark? You can't. And that's where I think the mystery it starts to get really deep.
So connect it for me. I have trouble sometimes following what you're thinking of something, and I don't know how you got it from where I started.
Thinking because connecting the dualism to the militarism and to the constant battle. There's always a battle motif, even if you watch a movie, like you want the good guy to win or the underdog or whatever, you know, there's always this Disney, like, or this kind of motif where there's always some kind of dualism is what I'm saying. And so that manifests itself in this context here, because you're saying, who is king? The beast or Jesus?
Okay. Yep. So that's always going to be the question, who is king? So it's not just about the politics, right? It's not just about the power here. It's also about the religious power. So I'm wondering, even in your churches, do you see anything that reeks of power over instead of power under, or saying, or trying to put America high or Israel high, right? So nationalism is putting any state high up there, right? Zionism is putting Israel high up there. Do you see that in your churches?
Well, how about the whole laity clergy distinction as far as
Okay.
power over? You're better than the rest of us because you're a pastor.
Whoa. That's true. So let's be very clear. I am better than all of you because I'm a pastor.
You state the obvious,
Which also
good
goes
sir.
back to Constantine, you know.
Yeah. There's definitely a hierarchy, a clergy laity disparity. Okay? Only the clergy can do certain things, only the laity can do certain things. Now that might be right or wrong, but it's certainly it kind of reeks of have some of that power part, right? That's one of the things Luther got so frustrated with, was the power of the church to forgive sins, through financial donation.
So that's where Luther is cracking on unauthorized power.
Yeah, I mean, he has quite a lot of things to say about the Pope.
Well,
As
and-
does the entire, think about it, the entire Western Church does, right? So, like, sorry, Eastern Church, the Eastern Orthodox all said, yeah, we're not going to hold to that power structure in the same way. They were concerned about it too. Of course, they have their own power structure. The Protestants said no to the power structure, and then we created our own power structure, right? And it's not that there's something wrong with having a leader. It's just a matter of where does it go over the line into
well, jumping
power.
forward to today, do we have churches? I'm sure no one's ever had a church where like there's a certain core group of people who maybe like give more than everybody else, that are more influential in the decision making, and everybody else gets left out.
Yeah.
So isn't that the same sort of thing?
Yeah, could be. Good.
Isn't it innate in our human condition that man's will to power? Like that's kind of the inner conquest. Let's get away from the outer conquest and apply it to the inner. We are constantly battling, spiritual demons and so on, such that the inner battle to do what is right, sins by commission and sins by omission. But the committed sins are the ones we say, oh my God, I knew what I was doing wrong and I still did it anyway. And why? Probably because you have a will to power. It probably has something to do with pride, fear, and ego. Most likely.
Everything does. Yeah. All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to say, or I'll jump into the first 5 verses and we'll get at least a little bit of new stuff, because there's a lot of application there as well. But I don't want to stop this conversation.
I would like to say we're at the 30-minute mark.
Okay, that's good. This is your last chance to say something on this, and that's not true because you can talk whenever you want. But trying to focus us a little bit. All right. So this passage ends with these 2 beasts, one being called 666, which I think is actually connected to the first beast. It's kind of a summary statement, even though it shows up after the second beast, but that doesn't really matter that much. The point is these 2 things have come together. The devil, or the dragon rather, has brought these 2 forward. And then we jump into the first 5 verses. So I'm going to just read those 5 verses and then we'll go a little bit slower into them. This is chapter 14. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb. Okay, just a little reminder, or not a reminder, maybe the first time telling you. Then I looked is going to show up 3 times in this chapter. There's 3 different sections. Then I looked, and I looked, and I looked. Okay, so we're doing the first one of these sections. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. Good, this will remind us, right? The foreheads thing. We talked about this a lot last week. And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and like a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are those who did not defile themselves with women, for they kept themselves pure. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among men and offered as firstfruits to God and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouths. They are blameless. Okay, so it starts off with this Lamb again. So the Lamb shows up. We've been talking about the dragon and the beasts, right? These are crazy wild animals. Now we've got this Lamb. Then I looked, and the Lamb, which was introduced in chapter 5, remember that, is coming back now. And he's standing on the heavenly Mount Zion. Remember the way that Revelation does it is it kind of gives you an upper world and a lower world. Okay, so there's something happening in the heavenly realm and in the earthly realm. And I'm just saying up and down because that's the way we're used to it, right? Really, they're like 2 different dimensions that overlap each other. So angels don't fly from another planet to come to Earth, right? They just appear because they're in another world. That's the way you're supposed to see it. They're just like, then they're there. Okay, so there are things happening in this world at the same time, and they're copies, and in many respects. So, so he's on heavenly Mount Zion. Earthly Zion is believed to escape this great, powerful, terrible day of the Lord, all these judgments that are coming. Earthly Zion is missing out on some of these things. So, and this place, Zion, is the place where deliverance happens. So in their minds, that's what they're going to be reading as they see this. Ezra, 4th Ezra, which is not in your Bible, but it's part of the pseudepigrapha. 4th Ezra? 4th Ezra might be part of the Apocrypha. No, I think it's a pseudepigrapha. It says the Messiah is going to stand on Mount Zion. And when he stands on Mount Zion, he's going to make war. Okay, so when the Messiah comes, so as soon as they see this, they're going to know this is the world that they live in. The Lamb is there. He's on Mount Zion. Oh boy, right? He's coming. You might think of this, when he rolls up his sleeves, he ain't just putting on the Ritz. Our God is an awesome God, right? He's like there's lightning in his fingers and his footsteps and thunder in his fists. I don't know, something like that. Thunder in his footsteps and lightning in his fists, right? You guys remember Rich Mullins? I remember Rich Mullins. Thank you, Jace, for bringing back my nostalgia from the early
Yes,
80s.
I remember, yeah.
All right, good. All right, so this is setting up the scene between chapters 12 and 13. Okay, the beast, the dragon, the city of Babylon, Rome, and the city of the Messiah, of the Lamb, of the Jerusalem. Okay, of all of these two cities are going to be contrasted now. We learned in chapter 12, the dragon is chasing the child. Chapter 13, these two beasts come, and it's all about who we're going to worship. And this is going to show the idolatry of following the beast. That's the problem, is that the people during this time are being seduced by the beast. And they're starting to fall prey to what the beast is trying to say. Hey, here's where power is. Right? That's exactly what the dragon, this is what Josh was saying, maybe. This is exactly what the dragon, the serpent, the wild thing in Genesis chapter 3 is saying. Hey, there's another kingdom. It's better. Let me show you this way. Don't listen to God. He's probably wrong. Right? What he's telling you is this, but really he knows this. It's not accurate. Okay, and so we choose the wrong path. Same path that the Proverbs child, right? The son in Proverbs go. It's the same path that Israel follows. We're always choosing wisdom on our own. We can figure we got this right. So we figure in our brilliance, right? Those of us right here on the screen, we're going to follow America wherever it goes, right? But this is setting up. No. Stop following Babylon. Stop following Rome. Stop following America. Follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Okay, that's verse 4, I think. Verse 4. So he attacks again those who take the name of the beasts. So and that's where we come to these 144,000. So this is the full amount of the elect, the 144,000. We've talked about them before. They're still there. Not one has been lost, because remember, they've been sealed. They've been protected. They have the name of God on their foreheads. That's what it means to be protected, to be sealed. They have a mark. Remember, it's not a literal mark. It's a symbol. Okay, it's just an image of something. There's no tattoo that's going to be on all of your heads. There's no barcodes on your arms. Like, that's not what's happening here. Okay, this is a symbol of being sealed for God, protected. All 144,000 are going to make it. Okay, that's the beginning part there. Then verse 2, I heard this voice from heaven, the sound of many waters. Obviously, John loves this sound. He's going to use 3 different similes, right? It's like the sound of many waters, like the sound of loud thunder, like the sound of harpers playing on their harps. Okay, so it's this loud sound, a chorus of many voices. They're singing this new song. That's good. Yes, signed, sealed, delivered. We're his. Well done. Signed, sealed, delivered. Okay. So these are new songs in the Bible. If you're singing a new song, it means a song of deliverance or a song of victory. So they're singing this victor song now, this new song. Only the ones who have fought the battle can sing this song, right? And remember how they fought the battle, right? They fought the battle completely on their knees. They've been submissive even to the point of death. They've prayed perhaps like Paul talks about, for their authorities. But they've allowed themselves to die. So they were suffering, now they've conquered through death. The angels aren't teaching the song, they've learned it through suffering. It's the same song that Jesus knows, right? Hebrews says that he learned through suffering. Like, that's incredible to me, that Jesus learned submission through suffering. And Jesus also sings this song, right? The Revelation song, the song of victory, when he rises on the third day. Okay, so they've been redeemed and purchased, verse 3 says. Where is that? No one could learn the song before the elders. Where does that say that?
In the middle of 4.
Oh, yeah. Yes, verse 3 and verse 4. That's right. So verse 3 says they've been redeemed from the earth. And then in the next verse, it says they have been redeemed from mankind. Your versions might say different words there, but it's both the same Greek word, agorazo. Okay, and they are, they've been redeemed or purchased, which is an interesting way of saying it, because remember, they weren't able to purchase anything before. Unless they had the mark of the beast, they couldn't purchase anything. And so now John is reminding them that they have been purchased. Even though, because they couldn't do anything, they couldn't fight back, they couldn't eat, they couldn't do work in the economy at all because they didn't have the mark of the beast. Now they've been redeemed. They've been purchased for God himself. So seems like a worthwhile investment. Lose everything here, but be purchased by God. Of course, it's easy to say. It's real easy for Americans to say because we are in the position of power. Right? Much harder to say if we're living in one of these other countries that are suffering for Christ every day.
Or if you're on the fringes of society in America.
That's a good point too. Yep. Very good point. There's plenty of other people that are unlike us right here around us that are systemically being abused and hurt. Yep. Verse 4 and 5, it is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are chaste. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These who have been redeemed from mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb, and in their mouth no lie was found, for they are spotless. All right, so this seems to be describing the kinds of people who have been purchased by God. The 144,000. If you want a description of the 144,000, here it is. They haven't defiled themselves with women. You know, women, you guys are huge defilers, apparently. And we'd all be better off without you. We'd be holy. We'd be part of the 144,000. Is that what's going on here? Are we supposed to be, everyone's supposed to be chaste? All of you who are married? No more.
I thought the whore of Babylon, this verse.
Say that again?
I thought the whore of Babylon, like that's what when I like, or like the woman in Proverbs, like the
Okay.
something Ollie. It's not necessary. It's imagery, not necessary, not literally a woman.
Although, I mean, let's go there in just a second, but let's ask the literal question. Because the early church seemed to exalt the status of celibacy in the church, right? Marcion even had a whole group, a parish of eunuchs that were special. Paul says that he wishes others were single like him. There's a lot of comments about sexual celibacy.
But he thought Jesus was coming back soon.
Yeah, so Laurie's point is Paul was just wrong, I guess.
Let's say you'd rather live in a corner of an attic than to be with a contentious woman.
That's true too. It's a good proverb. Yeah. So we know that like the early church did all these things. We know that Paul kind of thought that, but maybe Paul was just mistaken. But we also know that there's plenty of other passages where Paul does talk about marriage as a good thing, not just Paul, but other places. It seems perfectly fine. It's okay to, quote, defile yourself within wedlock, right? So there's all that's all in there. So what do you think this really is? What if this is a symbol of something? And you don't think John is saying all of you guys should get divorces or at least stay celibate? What is it a symbol of?
The worship with the women in the temples,
Okay,
that kind of thing that was going on with the other gods.
okay. So especially at that time, there was a lot of temple prostitution going on or going in. It was an act of worship. By the way, sexuality is an act of worship, but it was an act of worship with other gods, which God seems pretty ticked off about. Remember, the whole theme of the Old Testament over and over again is that God is a jealous God and doesn't want you fooling around with other gods. He says, I'm the only husband you can have. Right. And he even uses words like really graphic images sometimes. They says like, I am a better lover than all of them. And yet you keep going after them. What's wrong with you guys? Stay with me. So yeah, I think that's really good, Fran, that we go to other gods. Like it's not literal, it's we're committing adultery with God.
Yeah, I mean,
perhaps.
Sodom and Gomorrah is referenced earlier. Could it be a throwback to that as well?
Okay. All right, so connect that for me because I can't automatically connect that.
Well, Sodom and Gomorrah was debauchery, right? And we talked about false idols, gods, Sodom and Gomorrah falling. Didn't we in 12 and 11? Didn't we talk about? Wasn't there something about Sodom and Gomorrah?
There was, but I don't think for that reason. Anybody remember where that is? Anybody got a computer and can type Sodom in? I think it's chapter 11, verse
11.
It's 11,
verse 8. Verse 8. Which is
Okay.
figuratively the great city, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt, where also the Lord was crucified. So Sodom is just
Okay.
one of the nations. Those
Okay,
bad-
so it wasn't about fall. Okay, it was something else. I'm sorry. It's my other reading. Sorry.
That's right.
Or-
Might it have to do with focus? Where
Okay.
a woman will, you are divided now. You take care of the woman, or your mind is on the woman and not as much on God. Also, in the Old Testament, it was talked about, don't take these women because they'll bring other gods into your society.
Right. So it's not women so much as it is division, right? Which is kind of what Fran was saying. It's causing you to go to other gods. And remember, women, don't feel bad about this. This is written to men, as all of the New Testament is pretty much written to men, because most women couldn't read at this time. Actually, most men couldn't read either, but men were dominant. We're just gonna have to live with that. But for us, for sure, it's talking about either sex.
For
right?
us,
That-
when men are not dominant. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's still true. It's just a little less true. Yeah, you're right, though.
maybe it's just about sex, I mean, maybe the point is the next one, these are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Sex can be a very, awesome thing, and it can distract from other things because it's so awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe it really is about sex,
Yeah. So remember in the Old Testament, there's this great story about David and Bathsheba. Do you remember that story? And it's not the Bathsheba, but right after the Bathsheba story is after she gets pregnant and David calls Uriah home from the war. And basically his whole thing is, Uriah, I want you to go home and sleep with your wife. Go home, because he doesn't want to get found out. And Uriah says, I can't do that. Why can't he do that? He knows very well the rules of war. So
He's
the
gotta
rules
stay
of war
celibate.
are chastity during that time, right? Holy war requires you to be purified, okay? To separate yourselves from all of that and to go forward in the direction that you're going, to be not distracted, right? So I wonder if there's something going on with that too, which is exactly in line with what Travis, what Dad, what Fran were all saying, right? This thing that moves you away from the Lamb, We're supposed to be following the Lamb wherever it goes. Not this hot chick or that hot chick or that hunky guy, or that Liam Neeson lookalike, or I don't know who your hot one is, right? Right. Then there's the Jezebel heifer, right? Yeah. Right. So anyone who's distracting, who pulls us away from the main goal here. So the 144,000 are virgins in that they've kept themselves pure from all defiling relationships with the pagan or the world system, with the empire. They're not joining up with what's going on here. We're separated from that. And they're not following the Lamb like strolling around heaven. They're following him as in we are following in his footsteps of what wisdom looks like. So again, that's back to the tree that Joshua was talking about. All right, this knowledge of good and evil, this wisdom tree. So these are the ones who have followed the Lamb. They've denied themselves. They've taken up their cross and followed him. So getting a little bit of gospel language in here too. And then what about first fruits?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
hear my voice. That's weird. In Revelation 17, verse 5, it references Revelation 14, verse 8. It says, in honor for it, a name was written, a mystery, Babylon, the great, the mother of harlots, the abominations of the earth, so on and so forth. So I'm thinking, oh, okay.
Oh no, I was giving Travis a thumbs up. He told me 10 minutes. You keep going, Josh. I'm listening.
No, I think just to reiterate, I think, did we already move past the woman part? I think we did. Sorry to take us back if we did.
That's okay. If you've got something else to add.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, I just was looking at 17, chapter 17, verse 4 and 5. It talks about, the scarlet, and the woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold, and this precious, like enticing kind of like, hey, come to me, like I got you. I'm gonna, like, kind of what Fran was saying. Okay, come to the whore, I will bring you happiness. And it's like this, it's like, no, it's not really true. It's not true.
That's right. So trying to sway you, right? Again, the boy, the son in the Proverbs. Is it going to be Lady Folly? Or is it going to be Lady Wisdom? What's he going to choose? And Lady Folly, the whore of Babylon, the empire of Rome, we can call them all the same thing. They're all trying to say, hey, come our way. Don't follow the Lamb. Sacrifice, martyrdom, death. All you got to do is take the mark. Everything's going to be great. Eat, be merry. Life is good. Enjoy the system that we've built around you. It profits you. It's okay.
What
You
is
hear
this? whole
America
thing-
saying this? Yeah.
What is this whole thing though about like marriage is like a compromise throughout the like we start out in Genesis, man and woman were clearly like partners, but then throughout other places it seems like marriage is a compromise. Like, yeah, I guess you can have sex if you're married, but it's almost like it's like a weird compromise thing, like it's not good. But it was the original design. If we look at it, so like why is it a compromise?
I don't see that compromise that you're talking about. I mean, I see throughout God is saying, yeah, I want you to be married to me.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Because Ephesians, yeah. Anyways. Yep.
It's a beautiful thing. I mean, certainly a few passages like this one can maybe lead you in that direction, but I think we're saying that's not what this one says. So I think marriage is a beautiful thing. I think it's not the thing. It's not a necessary thing, because we're married to our husband, hopefully, God, Jesus. But these are ways that we can express that marriage, I think, on earth. So I think it's a beautiful thing, the right thing. Not an essential thing, but a right thing. So it also says first fruits in here, since we've only got just a couple minutes here.
Maybe as we discern.
Sorry, say that again. Nope. Okay. It says these.
Hold on, just
Sorry.
give her a minute, Jace. It's Lori. She's talking up. Go ahead, Lori.
Okay. Her mic's on mute right now, so maybe she doesn't want to say anything.
No,
Okay,
she turned
go
it
ahead.
off. Just-
Maybe she can put it in the chat. Put it in the
say,
chat.
I'm sorry, other Lori.
Nope, you're on, Lori. We're trying to listen to you if we can understand you, but you're a robotic voice right now.
Oh.
Do you want to give it a shot? Or do you want to put it in chat?
Too confusing. Maybe as it gets closer to the end, closer to the beginning, I was starting to focus on him instead of focusing on the gift he gave us with each other.
I'm sorry, Lori, I'm not getting enough of what you're saying. Your internet is poor or something. But if you want to write it in the chat, I can probably try to get it, but I can't understand what you're saying. Sorry. I'll come back to it and read it, or somebody will if you want to put it in there. Okay, so the end of verse 4 is, these have been redeemed for mankind as the first fruits for God and the Lamb. I just wanted to bring up that word first fruits again. Paul brings up first fruits a lot, that Jesus is the first fruits of the resurrection, right? He's the one to come through first through sacrifice again. So yeah, and they're blameless. There's no spot on them. These people, they're just like Jesus, blameless. Because of Christ, our sacrifice becomes acceptable. So we've been talking about like fidelity to God, faithfulness. We've been talking about discipleship, what it looks to follow the Lamb. And we've been talking about self-sacrifice throughout all of this. And then it ends with, there's no lie found in their voice, found in their words. What's that, do you think?
It's not deceiving. It's not full of deception.
Which is contrasted to,
It's the beast,
yeah,
deceiver, the devil.
yeah, it's been the whole thing, right? He's been trying to deceive you, but there's no lie found in their. We are going to stay strong. We're going to say the truth no matter what. Can you imagine trying to stand up in a world that's telling you one thing? Empire, religion, state, nationalism, whatever, it's telling you one thing, and then you've got to stand up against that and say the truth. You're not going to follow the lie. Sounds like a question about timing. As we get closer to the end, do things change? Say more about that, Travis.
Oh, I was asking Lori, so we'll see if she expects further.
Oh, okay, I got you. Sorry. All right. So he's passing himself off as Jesus. This remember, that's the Trinity, the beast, and the dragon. So they're passing themselves off as God, as Jesus, but we don't have the spirit of Antichrist. We're going to be truth tellers. So, and they sing this new song because it's a victory song, just like the Israelites praised when they conquered at the Red Sea, etc. All right, so that's five verses. So we'll stop with that. How do you think in the last couple of minutes, and only a couple people probably get to talk, unless it's Josh or Travis, then only one person will get to talk probably. I'm just teasing you guys. How do you think that we should not defile ourselves with women, or have the truth ever in our words, or be the first fruits, or follow the Lamb? These are all, I think, saying the same thing. How do we do it in our everyday 2023, being part of the empire? Like, we're not going to change. We're not going to leave the empire probably. Right. And just for, if there's new people here, last week we talked about this, right? I don't mean to say that America is evil. Okay. I mean to say all nations, all power structures have a tendency towards that because they want to stay in power. So if we were living right now in China, which is also an empire, or Russia, which is also an empire, or even Palestine, which is under an empire of Israel, right? There's still a power structure there that I would say, how do we live in Palestine where the authorities seem to be oppressive? Okay, so this is it's not an anti-American rant. I love America. It's a great place to be. I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon. But like, how do we live in this world? How do we tell the truth? How do we follow the Lamb?
It takes a lot of prayer.
Okay, I think
That's
that's a
all,
great place to start.
that's all I can say. It just takes a lot of prayer.
Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God.
Good. Good. Quote Micah 6:8. You can't go wrong there, right?
Submit to the will of God, even if you don't know what it is, pray to know it. God's will for your life, and succumb to his power over your life.
Okay.
Give up your own, as they tell us, give up your life and take your life in Jesus.
In the word. So
Your ego, your power, give it up to Jesus.
So that sounds really compelling and really spiritual. And so I'm good as long as it stays at that level. Right? As long as I just say yield to Jesus, I'm in. When does it get uncomfortable? When do I become the first fruits? That is the sacrifice. When do I say, okay, I have to stand up for this. This is a real problem. And I'm gonna lose big time when I do. Because
Define lose big time.
When you fight for justice of the fringe.
yeah. So how do we do that?
What's that mean? What's that look like?
What's your area of injustice? What, I don't know. Who does it mean we're standing up for? Maybe I'm not going to argue about politics right now, but maybe it's standing up against capital punishment, or maybe it's standing up against abortion, or maybe it's standing up against racism.
I have a couple thoughts.
More than just saying, I don't like those things, and I'm going to pray against them. Sorry, go ahead, Randall. I think you were talking.
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts. One is it can just be as simple as challenging favoritism in the workplace. I mean, the moment you push back on a supervisor that's favoring one of the coworkers over another, and I had the situation at work, and it wasn't directly related to someone showing favoritism against me per se. It was, how do I acknowledge the favoritism that's taking place between two of my colleagues and their supervisor, you know? Something like that makes it extremely uncomfortable. How do you push back on your manager when he's asking you to fire someone, and you know full well that if you need to fire this guy, then there's two other people that should be going as well. And I had to process. That's one where I actually did speak up and say, no, we can't fire him because it wouldn't be just to do so if we're going to let these other two guys stick on, you know? So these are uncomfortable situations that are very practical, very everyday. It's not pie in the sky kind of thing. I think the second thing, though, that I wanted to say was it continues to baffle me how unknown this message about suffering is within the church. And so we are constantly talking about victory in Jesus and how we can get, and it is just disgusting to me to think that this discussion of suffering for the sake of the kingdom is so quiet that whenever I bring it up at my church, whenever I bring it up from the front as I'm introducing a lament song during the worship service, people are like, I don't want to hear this. Are you just a Debbie Downer? Why are you trying to prepare me for suffering with some lament song right now? You know, and it's just ridiculously fascinating to me that we've gotten so big into the prosperity of our salvation. And I don't mean material prosperity, but just prosperity anyway, that we don't accept the reality that, like you've been saying, sometimes we have to suffer and be a doormat in order to actually see the kingdom come on earth.
And don't you think that as individuals, we have to be really living? When I was saying about submitting your life, I was saying that, you know, you're in the presence of God and you're trying to find out more about him and his will and how to deal with the situations all the time. And I think that even when we say we're Christians, that we are not going into the presence of God to understand where we need to be and where we need to be operating in these situations. I think we, say, well, I know how to fix that. And, rather than living in an effort to understand where and what we should do as his disciples.
I think that a man is perpetual problem, and what we do at church, at least in our church, most of the time we come to church to hear a message, but we don't come to express our problems, because God forbid I come and tell people how messed up my life is, and because they'll just use my sin against me.
I do.
So what happens we just act like everything's okay. Yeah, the church in China knows about suffering. Suffering is, Randall, is such a huge part of humanity. Real quick, and I'll shut up. I want to quote
Okay, you get the last word, Josh. Go ahead and say it, because it's 9:18. You're 19.
Abraham Joshua Herschel. He says this: outwardly, Homo sapien may pretend to be satisfied and strong. Inwardly, he is poor, needy, vulnerable, always on the verge of misery, prone to suffer mentally and physically. Scratch his skin and you come upon bereavement, affliction, uncertainty, fear, and pain.
That's good. All right, we'll stop with that. Hopefully see you guys back here. A few of us seem to hang out sometimes for a few minutes. If you want to do that, you can. Who knows whether anything important will be said, but it's where heresy usually begins. So if you want to sit around for that, that's fine. Not from me, but from other people here. So let's cut the feed so that the